Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind. Boy, do I have some bad news for all you leftoids out there. The narrative over the last 2 years has been that Donald Trump is unelectable. Of course, we've been talking about it. I think the strategy was to speak it into existence, as they say. Just keep saying it over and over again. One day it's going to be true. Trump's definitely going to prison this time. Just the more we say it, the higher the likelihood that it actually happens. I think that was probably part of the strategy. I think for the most part, the strategy when dealing with Donald Trump and the clear political threat that he poses on the establishment has been nothing but absolute sheer copium and corruption. Well, folks, where we are slowly but surely breaking through the copium. It's getting to the point where it's so obvious that Donald Trump is doing well, that Joe Biden is crumbling. It's getting so freaking glaringly obvious. It's getting so unanimous that even the most far left of networks simply cannot report on anything but the basic reality that Trump is surging beyond anywhere we have ever seen him before. That's the frickin' headline. Leftoid brains must be exploding. We went very quickly from Trump's going to jail to Trump is literally in the best position to be reelected as president of the United States ever. You hear that? Ever. Literally, Trump has never been polling this well. We got some stuff to get into. Let's break through that leftist copium. So let's roll the tape. All right, friends. So here we go. For the most part, you turn on MSNBC, or NBC, I guess in this case, and you're met with a bunch of leftist partisan porn that's just reaffirming your worldview that Trump is done. Well, imagine being a leftist viewer turning on NBC News tonight, expecting to hear that Donald Trump is facing probably another indictment, and instead, this is what you're forced to face.
Here it is. Wow. Donald Trump, we have at 46%, Biden, 44%.
And this is significant because this is the first time in the history of our poll that former President Trump beats President Biden, still within the margin of error, but still significant.
Yeah, in 2019, 2020, when Trump was president, he trailed all of them. This year, he's trailed all of them in our poll. First time in more than a dozen polls we've seen a result like this. Some of the other ingredients that go into that, Biden has long had an advantage over Trump on likability. Look, at the start of this year, 39% said they had a positive view of Biden, barely 30% of Trump. We've seen consistently a gap like this. Now, the gap is gone. 36 positive on both, and actually Biden 1 point more negative than Trump. That's been a significant advantage for Biden. Our poll says that advantage, at least for now, may be gone. And we talked about younger voters on foreign policy, and it's true on a host of other topics. Disaffected with Joe Biden. We have 46% for Trump, 42% for Biden among the youngest voters. The youngest voters in the 2020 election were Biden plus 26. This could be a massive sea change. And if you take a look here, too, everybody sort of says, hey, I'm not too nuts about the possibility of this matchup. So we said, let's measure this one way. And here's how we did it. Biden against an unnamed Republican. This is just a referendum on Biden, basically. And look at this. He goes from being in a dogfight with Trump to being double digits behind. But then flip it around. Trump against an unnamed Democrat. Trump goes from leading against Biden to being down by 6 points against the Democrat.
Just a fascinating look at the state of the race with just a little under a year to go. Steve Kornacki, great stuff. Thank you so much for being here.
Pay attention to the words that were said. It is the first time in more than a dozen polls that we've seen a result like this. And that's not the first time this week. In fact, Quinnipiac polls, I'd argue a lower rated pollster than NBC. I mean, NBC is quite left-wing biased, but Quinnipiac takes it to a whole other level. We learned this week that Quinnipiac released a result showing Donald Trump leading by 2 points over Joe Biden, and it's the first time in their poll's history that they've ever released a number like that. The freaking first time in history. Now we have an NBC poll, the first in over 12 polls showing this data. It's less of an outlier poll. Remember, or what was it? Maybe like 2 months ago, there was a poll that was released. It was an outlier, horrible poll showing Donald Trump leading by 10. Everyone dismissed that poll, that ABC News/Washington Post poll back in, I think, late September. It wasn't enough evidence to prove a trend. That's what they said. It was an outlier. It didn't mean anything. Most likely, we were going to see the polls revert back to normal. And maybe for a short period of time they did. Boy, has that not lasted. Take a look at the RCP average now. Folks, I really want to focus on the pollsters. Because for the most part, we'll be following Rasmussen reports, II and TIPP polls, Messenger/Harris X, or or Harvard Harris, Emerson, of course, Trafalgar polls. You know, those are usually the most reputable pollsters off the top of my head that will show Trump leads every now and then. It's kind of like an expected thing, especially places like Rasmussen. Well, now, I mean, it seems as though everything's flipped on its freaking head because the TIPP poll shows Joe Biden leading, the Rasmussen poll shows Joe Biden leading, and pretty much everything else listed, as you can see, what is this, like 15 polls, shows Donald Trump leading decisively on the popular vote. And look at the pollsters. CBS News, CNN, Marquette, Morning Consult, Yahoo News, Quinnipiac, Fox News, The Economist / YouGov, Reuters Ipsos, NBC News as the final poll. Every single name that I just listed, these are all pollsters that in the past we would have disregarded as inaccurate Democrat bias garbage polls, push polls. These are the same pollsters who have Donald Trump losing by 10 to 15 points ahead of Election Day, underestimating his support by anywhere from 5 to 7 points on average. These are the same pollsters who showed Joe Biden in the 50 and high 40s approval rating after the fall of Afghanistan for months on end when he was polling in the 30s with places like Rasmussen and other reputable sources. So now we're at a point where Joe Biden is doing so poorly with the American electorate that even the most dishonest left-wing push pollsters can't find a way to spin it. You know, Joe Biden's had a lot of opportunities, a lot of doors have opened for him, and he has failed to capitalize. He has failed to get a win, well, over the last, almost 3 years that he's been in office. That same NBC poll shows us that President Biden's approval rating drops to the lowest level of his presidency, and for the first time, he is trailing behind President Trump in a hypothetical 2024 matchup. So not only is he trailing Donald Trump, but he's at his lowest approval rating ever, and where he fails, well, foreign policy and generally issues.
Overall, this is the handling of the Israel-Hamas war. And again, it kind of measures overall up with Biden's foreign policy approval. But look at this. Among the oldest group of voters, 65 plus, there's a majority who approve of how Biden is handling this. That's plus 12. Look at the youngest group of voters. 20 approve, 70% disapprove. He is 50 points underwater with the youngest group of voters. That is a 62-point net swing between youngest and oldest on this topic of Israel and Hamas.
And it's a critical group of voters that he needs in order to win re-election, that's for sure.
You know, he had opportunity again to be a wartime president, and, you know, generally that's good for a president. It's kind of a sad concept, but you understand where it comes from, you know, rallying the troops, metaphorically, so to speak. But even with that opportunity in Ukraine and now in Israel, Joe Biden has failed spectacularly. Because he's playing some sort of weird game where you can obviously tell he has ulterior motives, where he's representing some sort of lobbyist interest. It's extremely obvious. He's trying to play both sides as per usual. And in response, what are we seeing? Well, he's failing across the board to garner any increase in support, especially on the issues and on his response to certain issues. From his failed response to Maui, failed response in Afghanistan, the student loan failure to do anything on abortion when Democrat voters were pleading for at least something even symbolic to be done, and now in the Israel-Hamas conflict, Joe Biden playing this sort of weird middle ground, trying to support Israel while trying not to offend all the, Gen Z radical extremists. It's just not working, and he's hitting all-time freaking lows across the board, right ahead of election season. The timing could not get better or could not get worse, depending on your perspective. But with all that being said, I think, to conclude this video, the only thing that needs to be said is, it's freaking happening. Finally, it's freaking happening. I think we're finally reaching that inflection moment, that inflection point, and the whole liberal left-wing hierarchy, hegemony, well, it's crumbling before our very eyes. And it's not just in the United States, it's across the Western world. A right-wing nationalist libertarian candidate was just elected as president in Argentina. Joe Biden is falling, Justin Trudeau's falling, they're all freaking falling. And maybe, just maybe, the world is freaking healing. And hopefully going back to basic freaking common sense. Anyways, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.